I know what you're thinking, and this is still the Mad Pastors Podcast.
It is indeed. We are still mad, and we are still pastors.
I'm always mad. Much like the Hulk, as we learned in the first Avengers, Mark Ruffalo said,
Now might be a really good time for you to get angry.
That's my secret, Captain. I'm always angry.
Listen, we're super excited. I've also noticed in our podcast that I tend to look down at monitors and not at the camera. So sorry.
Not at you.
Sorry. I'm like that guy that had eye surgery at church that you don't.
Their eyes are up here.
Oh. There were a lot of people at church that were older and got eye surgery when I was a kid, and I always struggled because I never knew if they were looking at me when they talked to me. It was always like they were like, "Hey, how are you?" I couldn't. I'm sorry. If that's you, no offense, but life stuff. Anyway, we are super excited. Listen, I know y'all have been listening to us now. This is like episode 46. And we're excited. We're taking a break after our Red Flag series, which is great. But we wanted to take a shorter podcast to kind of do some vision casting, talk to you about what's going on up in the next year, some stuff we're planning on launching, and invite you to be a part of it with us. So what you just saw was our opening bumper for G6 University. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal. I'm super, super excited about that. Part of why G6 Allies exists and why the Mad Pastors Podcast exists, one of the things that we want to do, in addition to providing the emotional care and being a safe place for pastors to vent and to help carry those burdens, but another way that we carry burdens of pastors is to give them worthwhile tools and resources that help them advance professionally.
Well, the problem is like you can come in and try and fit. It's like trying to come in and fix a project, and then, or the old proverb, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him to fish, feed him for a lifetime. How's it helping us if I know that's a
feed yourself.
Yeah.
How does he say that?
Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Don't teach a man to fish, and you feed yourself.
Man, I forgot all about Ron Swanson. He's so good.
It's good.
But it's this idea that, what does it do to help if we're not also putting tools in place to help churches and pastors continue on a healthy trend? And I think that, sorry to interrupt you.
For G6, one of the highest values that we have is being lifelong learners.
Right.
Like if you're not learning, if you're not growing, You're dying. And so we want pastors to grow. And the sad reality is so many pastors are not growing personally because they spend all of their time helping other people grow. They're shepherding their people, they're working through their issues with them, and there's no attention left to themselves. Either, spiritually, we talked about that before, how many pastors, the only spiritual development they do is sermon prep, which isn't spiritual development. That's preparing a sermon. Right. And so they don't spend time. I mean, they'll meet with people, they'll disciple people, they'll help others grow, but there's nobody there investing in them, and they're not taking time to invest in themselves. Yeah. There's, we're not taking time to grow professionally and learning how to do our jobs better, how to more efficiently and more effectively fulfill our calling and capitalize on the opportunities that are in front of us. And how many opportunities have pastors missed out on over their careers because they hadn't developed the skills necessary to capture those opportunities? And it happens a lot.
So much of, 100%, but so much of, I heard a pastor say, and I thought it was a pastor I worked for, and honestly, he didn't have a great end to his ministry, and it did end prematurely. But he did say something I thought was great. I mean, the average tenure of pastors is about 18 months, 12 to 18 months, sometimes 24 on the longer end. And I know that that's not every pastor. We've tried our best to pick healthy pastors and somebody to aspire to. When we talk about, we had Stephen Bell on, and Stephen had been at his church for,
18 years?
18 years, yeah. And so that's a good thing. Doesn't mean there's a set time limit. But what I did think was impressive about this pastor is he said, it was very astute, so many pastors, they're like one-trick ponies. They come in, they give all their tricks, and for 18 months to a year, they got about 2 years of quality, and then they move on. Some pastors just show up and can manipulate and keep bringing people in, but But that's a symptom. That's not a disease. That is a symptom of not growing. And I think so often we're not in a place anymore in our world and in our culture where information is restricted. You've got so much information. And I think this is what we run into most of all. I started seeing this early on in my ministry about 10 or 12 years ago. I wanted development. I'd go to my pastors and ask for it. And here's what we do. We would always read the newest rehashed John MacArthur or Andy Stanley book. And that was supposed to be development for us. And I don't think anything against those books. There's some great principles in them. But that wasn't real development.
That's not enough. Yeah.
And so it was just grabbing all this stuff. So most of what I think we struggle with as pastors is, where do I find good resources? And now in this climate in the last few years, where do I find agenda-free or as unbiased as possible, good sources that are objectively about God's Word and focusing on, how do we teach it? How do we study it? What do we understand about it? And rather than having to have somebody, whether it's right, left, in the middle, their agenda driving what we're learning. And so I think that there's a great need for that.
So that's one of the driving forces of G6 over the last year or so, 6 months to a year, has been a real shift in our focus to, we want to help carry the burdens of pastors, and this is one of the biggest burdens that they have. They are missing out on opportunities because they're not growing, and so we want to help you capitalize on those opportunities, and that's why we created the Grow Box, which has gone through its initial beta test, has gotten great reviews, and we've made a few tweaks to it to make it even better. And so I'm real excited about the direction that is going, and want you guys to check that out if you haven't already. growbox.g6allies.com.
We have some stuff we can't even name that it's like that's coming out soon. That's really cool.
So there's a lot of things like that we're doing, but the focus behind it is we want you to be growing professionally and personally, but Growbox is really kind of oriented around personal growth, and it's whether it's spiritual, emotional, financial, all of these different things. We want to help you grow personally. But the other side of that coin is professional growth. You need to grow personally, but you also need to grow in your skill set as a pastor. You need to grow in your leadership. You need to grow in how you understand the church and how the church works, and you need to understand how elder boards are formed and their function and how they work and how to develop one, or
understanding what an elder board's purpose is, so that when they name it something else at a church, you don't feel you understand
need
it.
One of the areas where we lack a lot of clarity is the historical context of the church. We get so myopic, and the church of the Lord is only my little context with my 100 people or my 1,000 people or whatever, and the church is so much bigger than that, and it's so much older than that, and there's a lot of church history context that will help you become a better pastor, and theological opinions and ideas that have been discussed by brilliant men and women over the years and centuries, and we need to know all of this kind of stuff. But where do you go to find all that?
And there's so much of it. You ask this question, it's like we are so inundated with information, and the sad thing is we settle for whoever's the newest author or YouTube, and those aren't always bad things, but it's almost like playing a lottery. And so one of the quotes I thought was so good, Al Mohler, who is currently, I believe he's still the president of Southern Seminary, said years and years ago, and I don't know, I'm not even saying that they've lived up to this or they're pursuing this, but sometimes we say things that are true whether or not we live them. And he said that the point of seminaries and the point of churches should be to raise up pastors who eventually make seminaries obsolete, because they are training their people just as well. And that was my goal. It was his whole idea. My goal is to put this seminary and every seminary out of business, because we are doing so well at training the church. And that's something that we've seen the need and the issue, and I think that sums it up so well, that yes, Growbox is about professional growth and personal growth, and I don't even, honestly, growth is just what we need. We are like in water's always rushing over, and we struggle, but for us, we begin to think at G6, what if we were to create a platform and an opportunity and a tool that is, it's almost like a tool belt more than anything, where because I genuinely believe, we've talked about this before, that so many seminaries, it's kind of like it feels like a Ponzi scheme, because we have so many pastors that we're not, unless you're the top 0.5% of pastors and you're incredibly well paid, and most of them aren't educated either, but you pay so much money and go into debt with seminary, and for what? I mean, I remember I led the biggest curriculum in the world for student ministry, wrote for 300,000 people, and doing that, I would connect with all these guys across the country, and these guys that were preaching at camps and doing all kinds of stuff, and they would come to me and say things like, hey, can you help me with my theology of baptism? And I was like, dude, you have a master's degree from seminary, and that's the most basic part of the faith. And I never attacked him or beat him up, but I began to think, if we're not teaching the basics, what are we doing? And it starts reminding me so much of undergrad school, where it's like, what'd you get your degree in? Gender studies. What are you doing now? Work at McDonald's. I mean, it's not like we're preparing for anything. So what if we were to take all of the hassle, the overpayment, all of those issues out of a seminary and move it into what almost feels like a structured set of master classes that you can watch and grow with and have a subscription to, and to be able to say, I need to grow here with church history, or you know what, I need the practicum over here, and by pastors and for pastors. Mm-hmm. The sad thing is, most people that get seminary degrees, do you know how much church work they usually do? Not a lot. Do you know
the students?
Yeah. The students that go, they don't have a whole lot. They get their masters, they get their doctorates, they go to church, burn out, and don't do well, and then guess where they go? Seminary to teach. That's what we're seeing as a huge cycle. I don't want to be taught by people. The whole phrase it's a funny phrase, but those who can't do teach. Well, that doesn't really work in ministry. Those who can do and have done need to be teaching about realistic things, because the thing we run into, Michael and I run into more and more across the board, is this statement: well, seminary never prepared me for this. Mm-hmm. Well, then seminary sucks across the board if it's not. And I'm not saying every seminary is bad, but here's what I know. You shouldn't go into debt for having quality teaching and what God has for you. You shouldn't go into deep debt for that. That's not the design of the church. And two, your church should be benefiting from education as much as you are, right? So we've thought through and looked at this, and we can't give you all the details at the moment, but big picture for G6 University is a platform that a pastor can pay for on their own, that's incredibly affordable monthly, to be able to work through. And this, Michael, this hits everything from financial side hustle, like Michael's working on a course right now for trading stock in the stock exchange to help make money on the side. Most pastors don't have retirement, and they don't have good income. So how do we do that? All the way to how to address and find needs in your community, all the way to systematic theology. So it is an incredible, I've never seen anything quite like G6U, and that's why we're doing it.
Right.
It's incredibly varied.
So one of the things that we want to accomplish with G6U, we do want this to be a source of continuing education. So if you're asking, okay, who is the primary audience of G6U? Let's talk about that for a minute.
Good call.
It is varied in its appeal, because it does appeal to so many different groups of people. So It's great for continuing education. The pastor who's been in ministry for 15, 20, 30 years and is looking to freshen up on systematic theology, or is wanting to learn about some of the newer resources and ideas in hermeneutics, or any just pick a topic and let's learn about that a little bit. And it's a great resource for that. It's a great resource for those who are very young in ministry, high school graduates, college graduates, those in college that are thinking they want to pursue a calling in the ministry, but they're not sure if they want to enroll in seminary yet. So we are not intending to replace seminary. I think this is complementary of seminary, or almost a prerequisite of seminary for some people. That you need to sign up for this and go through our courses, our master classes, and involve yourself in G6U as preparation for going to seminary.
We even have the idea of working with with your church, and one of the things I'm excited about is talking about we'll have programs and things lined up that do you need to train elders.
Well, that's stop interrupting me.
Sorry.
You're interrupting me so much. You're so excited about this.
Bad.
It's okay. I'm excited too. So the other target audience for this is pastors and elder teams who want to train their people, their lay leaders, to assume that high level of responsibility and such an important role of church leadership, whether it's elders or deacons or some kind of church leadership role. Most churches that I've associated with, that I've worked at, or that I've coached, most of them have an elder board of some kind.
Right.
Almost none of their elders have any amount of theological training.
No.
They may be very wise, they have a great understanding of the Bible, but they've never gone through any kind of systematic theological education, and they don't have any concept of church history or this is stuff that they need.
It's
and
almost
so
like
we want this to be a tool for churches to train their elders, and so it's not just an online course with a bunch of material we pass to you and you consume it and that's it. It's very interactive. It's almost like a vetting process for your leadership team. If you've got senior pastor, you need elders and you want to involve a new, Joe here wants to be an elder.
I'm Joe.
He's Joe. And what is your process for involving him on your elder team?
Yes.
How are you preparing him? How are you training him? How are you vetting him to make sure he's qualified and seasoned enough and is called to be an elder? Yeah. What does that process look like? For most pastors that we've talked to, it's been, he's attended the church for the last 20 years. He's a faithful tither. He leads a Sunday school class.
It all seems good.
Okay, he should be an elder then. Well, let's put it to a vote.
Right.
He may be one of the most godly men you've ever met and may be a fantastic elder, but what are you doing to set him up to be the best elder that he can be?
And here's what I would, if I was listening to this.
Provide him the tools to do that.
Yeah. And if I was listening to this Paul says it very clearly, when you put somebody in leadership, and I think that there's a lot to say. I think we have a lot of new believers who have been believers for years, people that just never grew. And so you can change a lot of stuff on the outside, do that, and look the part. But I think what I love about what you're saying is that Paul would say, don't put somebody in leadership who isn't trained, who isn't learning. And I've watched personally, one of the churches that I love the most that I started out at is still 7 years after I've left and gone on and done other things, is reeling in constant problems and turnover and issues because they don't really know. They know they want accountability, but they don't know what that's going to look like. And they keep tweaking systems, and it's not about systems. It's about people. And so, but all that to say, if I was listening to this, I might be tempted, if I didn't know us and I didn't know what we're doing, and I wasn't the one planning it and doing it, I would maybe say, well, so I'm supposed to give all of my control to these two guys. I listen to their podcasts. They seem solid, but am I supposed to do that? And I think what the cool thing is no. We're not telling you that we're going to take over all the training of your elders. What we're shouldering it with you. And what's really neat about this is you're not independent of this process. You're integral to it because as we do it, as your elders are walking through solid teaching that is taking a lot of time off of your back because you need to be healthy and loving your family and investing, and you got a lot of stuff going on, you'll actually be able to track, to follow up with each one of these men. Because I've watched at another church I watched elders, the idea of an elder, pastor literally said, we're going to wash people out. It wasn't we want to find the right people. He wanted to create a program that was so long and arduous that people that he didn't want to be elders just wouldn't be.
They'd give up.
Yeah, and that's just ridiculous because you're supposed to be training people up. But again, so much is going on. So what if the whole idea of G6U is to partner with you as a pastor, whether it's in continuing education, supplementary education, even being able to partner with people like Christian high schools that are sending their seniors out, right? Is all built on a platform to do this along with you rather than to say we're going to take this from you. Because I get really apprehensive as a pastor when that happens. That's why we're not doing that.
Right.
I bet you have all those things. It's like, no. come and do our leadership pipeline where we'll take over everything. I don't like. That's not what we do.
Yeah, Pastor, you should not outsource the discipleship of your people, especially your core leadership people. And that's not what this is at all. We're not outsourcing your leadership training for your people. This is us coming alongside to help you provide some of those tools that you don't have the time to curate yourself. This is something that you send your people to and say, hey, come be a part of this. Learn from them, and then we are going to discuss it. And so we're in contact with the student who's enrolled in it, as well as their past. If it's like a eldership training type thing, then we're working with the pastor and that elder team to, hey, this person is applying to be an elder or whatever your process looks like, and here is the result of their assessments. Here's the courses they've completed. Here's some of the things that they've submitted, some of the pieces of work that they've submitted. This is how they view things. This is our entire encapsulation of their time at G6U. Let's talk through what that looks like. Hey, this person clearly is not ready to be an elder in your church.
Right.
This person looks solid.
They could be a younger.
Let's have that conversation. So it's a resource for you as a pastor or as your church to help with that. I think we could even take it another level, and not just for elders or deacon training, but for your. And this is where you were going earlier before when you interrupted me.
Thanks for interrupting me again.
I uninterrupted you to let you reinterrupt me.
All right, there's too many negatives. Just go on.
Where you as a church, you want to provide some holistic, solid, quality training and teaching for all of your small group leaders or your kids volunteers or your student leaders, or you want everybody in your church, all of your leaders, to be able to go through some training and have access to this training. We will set up an entire system just for your church.
It's a big deal.
To take your volunteers through this training, which can be done at their own pace. They can sign in and take it at their own speed, watch different videos, focus on different ones. It's very, very flexible. I think that in that sense.
Maybe most people are here. This is where I was at. I'm always have been, and still am, incredibly passionate about leader development and like volunteer development. But I would have, most churches, student ministries would swell, and as your student ministry swells with your students, obviously you got to have leaders to sustain that. So we'd have anywhere from 50 to 70 leaders, and it's like, man, how do I, and the best thing you can tend to come up with, because you're already doing student ministry, already doing this, already asking something of them, is I would find a really great book and hand it to them, and then we'd talk about that book in the training. And that's not a great training, because then I could never get to the stuff I really thought was super helpful, because I was struggling with that. And that's where I think we bridge that gap in a helpful way. Even the idea, so we won't have all this, we don't have all this information yet. We want to really put that taste in your mouth. We want to hear from you at one point. We're going to let you know about that. But one of the things too, that when we have in this initial beginning, and as we're adding things and starting it out, for a very low cost, we want to be able to offer you even your whole church, not just for leaders, or not, you think how complicated this is going to get, right? Like, well, how are they going to do this and that? And, well, I got one from that. No. We want to be able to open this up to your entire church body for you to help and use and to connect and do all that. And so it's a really neat idea that, again, we're not trying to attack and close seminaries, but the idea that what Al Mohler said should be true. We want to provide seminary level, yet easily accessible teaching and equipping to you, to your church, at whatever level they may be. So it's almost the idea is that it is varied depending on who's looking at it and who's what they're doing. So I think that's great. Yeah,
so we're super excited about this coming out, and it will involve us, Ian and I, teaching its material. We're actively engaged with some conversations with different pastors, seasoned ministry professionals and pastors from around the country to put their flavor on some of the material and maybe teach some of the courses, or at least some of the content for it. We're just at the beginning of this. This has potential to be very, very huge, and we're super pumped about the direction that it's going. But we want your help in it. So
absolutely,
contact us. Let us know what course material you want to see. What do you think is super important that maybe you've been through seminary and you're like, I didn't get training in this. I need help. I would sign up today for a course on X. Or I want to prepare my elder team for this, or I want to take my student volunteers through something like this, and here's a couple of the key points that I think they need to know about. Let us know all of those things, because that's going to be very helpful. Those recommendations are going to be very helpful in forming what this ends up looking like.
I want you to think about it this way too. Maybe this encompasses everything we're saying, but we really do need you and want you to email us, all right? So, and we want to be able, this is all about sharing burdens, and so the worst thing ever is if we go a direction that if it could have been adjusted 10 degrees would have been exactly the right place. But if you could create a university or a seminary just for you, what would you want and why? And so that idea, what was I not taught well? What do I just need? And I'm not, bless you. I'm not,
wow.
That was good. We don't edit that out.
We'll leave that in.
I was going to text, or, I'm not even berating, because I've been there too, berating the baptism guy who had gotten his master's. But what I'm saying is that so much of this, where do we need refreshers? How do we supplement and walk along? Because I think that we have, because of just American education, Western education, we've relied so much on a piece of paper and an experience that we've forgotten the whole point of learning in the first place. That learning is a privilege and a calling for every believer and every person in general. And so that is the goal, to make it clear, accessible, to make it practical. That is our whole goal. Why does it matter if we're studying something if it doesn't apply to our lives? And that's, every piece of God's Word does. That's how it's been designed. And even if it is going to draw us deeper in love with Him. And so, anyway, we're excited about that across the board. So I don't care if you're a kids pastor, a student pastor, if you're a senior adult pastor, if you're a head pastor, whatever it may be, an XP, I want you to think big like we're thinking and say, okay, if I had access to this tool for my whole church, if I had access to this for just my elders, I got 40 volunteers here and I need to train them, but I'm not doing it well. I want you to think big and say, what would be the perfect scenario for me? And then email that to us. Also, we'll put you on, just let us know in that email, but we'll put you on our mailing list for G6U so that you'll see updates on what's going on. But I can't wait, man. Yeah, I'm pumped.
It's gonna be exciting.
This is gonna be the junk. That's how you say it when you're in ministry, but it would be another word. But I'm a mad pastor. I'm not a mad saint. Either way. I don't know. I have people go, you can't say that, you're a pastor. And I go, I'm a pastor, I'm not a saint. But I'm also not Catholic, so whatever. But I think that's it. This is a short one, but this is a vision one. Listen, you always tell your church to have the vision you have. You spend all of your time vision casting. We want you to jump on board in this vision with us. Let's carry burdens together. Let's figure out what burdens need to be. And also, maybe we just need to let some stuff go. And so I want you to think about what would be the ideal tool for you and your church. What would be the things that we address and how we address them. Yeah, for sure. But if you could be, you're in control, you're integral, you're connected, but you also have people helping walk beside you and do all the work that you don't have to do. And that's pretty nice. Yeah. So you get to focus on the relationships. And that's where ministry grows. Yep. So
awesome. Thank you guys. So excited for what's coming with G6U, with GrowBox, with everything that G6 Allies is putting out this year. Yep. Big year for us, and we're so glad that you are with us on the journey. So we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Love y'all. Be safe. Matt Pastor's out.
Eyes up here.
Matt Pastor's out.